Hello, everyone. We'll be starting the actual slides and discussion here in just a couple more minutes. Make sure we have some more attendees join. I think we have quite a bit more registered than are in right now, so please be patient for a few minutes. We'll wait just another minute and then I'll start. For those of you who have joined, we will have a couple of polls during the meeting as we've done in the past, so I'll give you some heads up when those occur. Note there is a questions dialog so you can ask questions, and I'm 80% sure that I'll see them pop up on my screen properly. I think I've got this figured out since the last couple of times, so we'll work with questions there. And I see Jay's test question. I don't get permission to answer in writing, but I can answer verbally. All right, well, I'm going to start in the interest of keeping us all on time and making sure that I'm respectful of this 1 hour. Welcome again to our third quarterly upcoming TC meeting briefing. I'm Scott Simmons, the chair of the OGC Technical Committee and the overseer of our standards program. So for an agenda, things are a little different this time. I'll give a brief introduction to what we've changed, talk about some TC policy updates effective for this year, take a look back at our Sydney TC meeting. It'll be a little longer than quick because we didn't have quite as broad of attendance as sometimes we do have, and I really wanted to highlight some of the neat things we did at that meeting. And then talk about the upcoming meeting with respect to the theme we've developed, some key events, and very important, so stick around the whole time, logistics, because this meeting does have slightly unusual logistics relative to a lot of our other ones. So first, as a means of introduction, we have now split our pre-meeting brief into 2 sessions. The first session being this one, where we're going to talk much more about what's occurred recently in OGC and what's coming up at our next TC meeting, but not give the overview of the OGC, the history, and sort of the new member orientation. We're going to set that to be a separate webinar coming up shortly and continue to also have that session live at the TC meeting. This way, what I refer to as our regulars who've gone to a lot of TC meetings or at least have a fair bit of knowledge about what happens at TC meetings can really focus this session. However, for those of you who are about to take on your first TC meeting this March in Washington, please consider attending that new member orientation, be it online or face-to-face. Introduce yourself to me, track me down via email, or come find me in person in March. And watch out for all the acronyms, which I'll use like crazy today because I just kind of get lazy, but also so many people are becoming so familiar. So TC, Technical Committee, we'll keep calling it TC meeting today. And again, even if you're new and have never attended one of our TC meetings, stay on this call. It is intended for everyone's benefit, not just those who are regulars at our sessions. I do want to also provide a reminder of our TC meeting rules. Our planning committee has asked that we start reemphasizing these. First and most important, please, those of you that are attending, practice good etiquette. We need to keep our meetings civil. We occasionally see a few attacks that probably get on the boundary of what's acceptable socially, certainly what's acceptable in a consensus environment. So we request people to stay polite and not to make disparaging remarks about individuals or organizations. Stay relevant. We have a policy of not having just pure marketing pitches within our sessions unless specifically the session needs to have such a pitch. For instance, if there is a new potential standard that's associated with a product, it is perfectly acceptable for that speaker to explain how the product works and where that standard fits in. And many chairs do welcome those presentations. However, just a pure sales pitch is not appropriate for an OGC-TC meeting. We also request no rehashing of old gripes. That means if an issue has been discussed and settled, let's not reopen it unless there's some new pertinent information that needs to be discussed. I find our sessions have gotten really good about not having this problem anymore, but we just want to remind everyone. And last, and quite important as well, please keep the time. So if you're a presenter, remember you're not the only presenter, so please be courteous as you can. And for chairs, follow my example, and if someone's running over, you are allowed to stop them, move them along. It is not impolite to do so. Please recall that you have been speakers and presenters as well, chairs, and you never liked it when someone was not sharing the session well and your time was cut. So I really do request that we focus on trying to keep the time. Most working groups are quite good about this, but we do have occasional problems. Okay, with respect to TC policy updates, oh yeah, right, sorry, we had a quick poll first. Thank you for reminding me, Greg. Really quickly, which region are you from? So all attendees, please complete the poll before I move on. All right. And let's see what we had. So in this case, 14% of our attendees are from Europe and 86% from North America today. Thank you very much. And thanks for reminding me on the poll, Greg. Okay, so with respect to policy updates, for 2016, we have proposed a new policies and procedures, and in fact, we voted on that last year. The vote was not approved due to some conflicts with the convention for naming our full standards track. Based on vigorous debate in Sydney and continued discussion, those policies and procedures have been revised, presented back to our technical committee for review, and I will be requesting the start of an electronic vote at our closing plenary on March 10. Those of you that are quite interested in policies and procedures, please dig through the document. I would love any comments and be prepared to discuss at the request for a vote at our closing plenary. The current policies and procedures have been active for more than 9 months, so it should be pretty familiar to everyone. Specifically, we have some new rules with respect to voting period and how SWIGs are stood up. New guidance that is in effect for this year but not in our current policies and procedures include: 1, all domain working groups are open by default. All new DWIGs are considered open. All existing DWIGs have about another 6 weeks to get back to me about whether they want to be opened. If open means that the DWIGs mailing lists are publicly accessible, so anyone in the public, OGC member or not, can join, and certain resources for the DWIG are available to the public. It does not mean that all the portal resources are accessible, nor does it mean that anyone and their brother can attend any DWIG meeting they want in person without having to perhaps pay for the registration fees for our meetings. So open is to include conversation. Open is not to degrade the value of DWIG participation by our more active members. Second, individual members can now vote in working groups as well as for certain TC matters. Individual members are now treated the same as an associate member in our voting hierarchy. And then lastly, all new OGC documents, that means documents that are created in 2016 or later, must follow Springer LNCS for citations. older documents are grandfathered in. If the documents go through a new revision, that is a new official OGC document revision number, then we will request that all citations be upgraded to the Springer LNCS. So you will see plenty of documents under review in our pending dockets at the moment. They do not have this format. It's because those editors created the documents last year. We'll be working with all of our editors to upgrade over the course of this year. Any questions so far on our introductory material? And I'll watch a little bit for the questions, but we'll continue now to talk a bit about what happened at our Sydney Technical Committee meeting. So I have been in this role now for a little over a year. One of the things I tried to do at the first technical committee meeting that I looked after was to organize a theme for that meeting, to try to have not just our working groups discuss matters that are topical to that theme, but also have our plenary presentations be focused thematically as a matter of, one, trying to generate some interest amongst our members for specific domains, and two, maybe just to make things a tiny bit more exciting. So for Cindy, we had absolutely wonderful sponsors who are very active in smart cities and Internet of Things activities. And it was nicely coincidental that our Sensor Things API standard was being approved for vote at that meeting, and we had some smart city initiatives in place in the OGC. So with that in mind, we decided to jointly with our sponsors have a Smart Cities and IoT theme for the TC Week. I'm going to take one break now because I see that Julie has a question. Is Springer LNCS available? Yes, I have a slide on the portal. I'll provide that in the OGC document template shortly, an example of all of the potential ways in which you can put LNCS into your documents. So depending on what you're citing, be it a journal, a book, a web resource, etc., I'll make sure that's available to everyone, and it will be in all of our document templates. Okay, stepping back to our theme. So I'd like to run you through the briefest summary possible of our plenary speakers so you can see the kind of content they were presenting to our membership. So one of our hosts, Data 61, which is a relatively new organization in the Australian government for science research, presented a bit of a history about their formation and what type of work they're doing with respect to data-driven future. A very active organization in the government, 1,100 plus employees with 31 government partners and 91 corporate partners, and working on a large number of projects. And specifically, they talked about a few of the geospatial technologies that Data 61, which is quite tightly affiliated with CSIRO. National map work, 3D, you know me, I love 3D stuff. Some spatial inference, and that is also including some feature modeling and extraction, IoT modeling, and advanced photogrammetry from unmanned aerial sensors. So fairly diverse work. You can see ties to a number of smart cities, smart activities, and I'll come back to a few more from Data 61 in a moment. We also had a presentation from Oren with respect to urban intelligence to support infrastructure, very smart city centric. Oren being an organization in the Australian research community for urban research. And so you can see the spectrum of their activities looking at health and well-being, energy policy, urban design, interactions in the social atmosphere, as well as further infrastructure enhancement. All elements of what we talk about in the OGC as smart city type activities. And as you can see, looking at the research institutions, the same groups that are working with Data 61 involved, so quite tightly integrated. They Oren described to us a federated system they have for data collection, synthesis, and analytics. Here's just a sort of highlight diagram of the type of work they're doing there with respect to data discovery, data access, processing tools, and then finally output to the public as well as to researchers. And again, because I have to do it, I had to show a cool 3D example. So here's a scenario planner, a tool that facilitates design of urban landscapes with generalized 3D representation. And lastly, we had a keynote, again from Data 61, to talk more about the Internet of Things and how the Internet of Things is impacting the larger issue of city development, smart cities, and a geospatial context. This was a great discussion. I implore all of you to go to the Sydney TC directory on our portal. In the opening plenary subdirectory, there are all of these presentations in full, because Arcadia in this presentation had a few, let's just say, controversial concepts to discuss and spur a lot of conversation amongst our own membership about what we think of Internet of Things and what we want to do and where spatial fits into this. And so he described this open IoT general vision of a middleware infrastructure for delivery of IoT services, something that fits quite well with some of the more fundamental work in our Sensor Things API standard, where you're accessing those sensors directly. And it looks like it's building it. Oh, sorry. And a second description of a open IoT smart farming application. So sensor-based monitoring of field parameters, the plant's soil conditions, moisture, etc., and then providing data analytics on top of that sensed environment. So all of us who've looked in the past at precision agriculture, this is sort of a step further, and it's not just remotely sensed content, but it's also the physically sensed live feeds from sensors integrated in a geospatial environment. In addition to those excellent plenary discussions, which again really helped focus some of our talk on the smart city environment, the folks involved with our urban planning domain working group, as well as 3DM and City GML, held an urban activities ad hoc. And that was just a discussion to see where do all of these things, when we talk about cities, fit within the OGC framework of standards and domains. So there is an urban planning domain working group that looks very much at the planning side. We have mobile location services looking at navigation within such environments. City GML, a specific environment where a format for storing and exchanging 3D city content. Other 3D standards that are looked after by 3DM or other standards working groups, and then of course smart cities initiatives, from OGC's white paper that was published last year to the Future Cities pilot that's underway at the moment. So the intent from that group was to find at least a common place to discuss these items outside all those specific groups I just mentioned. And at a minimum, we've agreed to establish a public email list, public being open to the wider audience outside OGC, for smart cities topics. The mail list will be titled something in the smart cities frame, something to that name, coming soon. And then use that as really a discussion forum and periodically meet either in one of the other domain working groups or in reactivated urban activities ad hoc as needed to discuss these topics. And we'll see how this gels over the course of this year. Second, our Point Cloud Domain Working Group met. This was the second official meeting of that domain working group, and they approved a Point Cloud survey, which is available at the URL I put here. Again, I request you, as possible, please, if you're working with Point Cloud data, or even if you don't work a lot with Point Cloud data but have even some ideas about what you'd like to do, get to the survey, complete it for us. The intent of this survey is twofold. One, to understand what the greater community of point cloud data users, that's the LiDAR community, bathymetric, meteorologic, etc., are doing with a variety of point cloud data, and what they would like to see happen with these data in a standard system, how we in the standards community might either build standards, integrate standards, or facilitate interoperability between data. And second, we'd like to have our own membership weigh in on what type of activities in the point cloud domain they would like to undertake. Do we have members that are interested in developing web services, a web point cloud service, for instance, or further integrations between existing standards for LiDAR point cloud data, or compression, standardization, etc. So we're interested in the larger community's desires and what our actual membership is interested in pursuing. So this survey will be critical for the Point Cloud Domain Working Group moving forward. We'll keep the survey open, it looks like, through the end of March. So please contribute. It'll be discussed at the TC meeting coming up in March. Again, at the ASPRS annual get-together in April in Fort Worth, Texas. And of course, we'll inform the group. We'll probably be using it heavily in the June meeting. And lastly, at the Sydney meeting, we had a soil interoperability experiment demonstration. Just briefly to talk about that. This interoperability experiment was intended to develop a prototype of a soil markup language and then test that prototype in real-world situations. And so that's a GML compatible encoding for soil feature. Probably many of you are familiar with the variety of soil data catalogs available around the world. There are some national standards and some international standards for the schemas to describe soil, but with respect to a language that facilitates the geospatial representation of that data and integration with other data, nothing really sits out there at the moment. And so the goal of this project, not just to do this testing, but to demonstrate web services and then develop an engineering report. This is a cartoon of the Exchange Foundation for a soil markup language. You can see, again, its intent is for digital agriculture, content being not just the soil type, but other information that is relevant to the use of soil data in the larger framework of agricultural science. So that is storage of nitrogen, clay content, water holding capacity, etc. Other things that are relevant to soils but may not be directly part of the soil classification. The group did present a demonstration of a number of web resources, had excellent response, excellent attendance, and now is a matter of identifying whether there are people who want to work on formalizing from this engineering report a new standard, something like Soil ML. We'll see how that goes forward. Okay, before I step to our upcoming meeting, I'm going to look and see if there's some other, we have some other questions. Online right now we have 13 attendees. And then the next question is the USDA National Resources Conservation Service, so NRCS, involved in the Soil ML. And at this moment, my understanding is that they're somewhat peripherally involved, but not directly involved. And the Soil ML community has reached out to them for more interest. The soil interoperability experiment was performed mostly by representatives from Australia and New Zealand and led by New Zealand folks. Okay, at that moment, I'll take just a second to see if there's any other questions that roll in.
I will just comment on that. There were people that were involved with from USDA.
Okay, good. So thanks, Greg. Okay, and now our upcoming meeting in Washington, D.C. So the theme we've established for this meeting is land administration and its relationship to economic sustainability. By design, not happenstance, our TC meeting is being tied to the World Bank's Land and Poverty Conference, which is being held the following week at the World Bank as well. And so we're coordinating quite closely with the World Bank for joint activities at both of these conferences. The Land and Poverty Conference, with its name quite clearly indicating its purpose, ultimately comes back to two major issues. How do we ensure that we understand land tenure and life cycle of land ownership and use, and how does that impact the economic sustainability of a country? At this meeting, we will have World Bank leadership presenting In our plenaries, particularly the opening plenary, we'll have keynote addresses from the World Bank and Thomson Reuters with respect to land administration in developing nations. We'll have those speakers and titles posted shortly. We will also be holding a land administration ad hoc that I'll come back to in just a moment. So specific events at the upcoming meeting. First, go to ogcmeet.org where you can find the up-to-date schedule, registration links, everything you need to know about the meeting. So for those of you who are not familiar, earlier this year we rolled out this new website. It's a mobile-friendly, very mobile-friendly, comprehensive view into each TC meeting that's live prior to and during the meeting, including an always up-to-date meeting agenda, so you don't have to necessarily go digging around the front desk to find the pages to show what meetings are meeting where. We should have it up-to-date on ogcmeet.org. My apologies, but we've had to go to 5 tracks again at this meeting. It's wonderful when we can stick to 4 tracks, but as everyone might suspect, Washington, D.C. will have very high attendance, and a very large number of our working groups would like to meet, have chairs and members present. And so, as is becoming quite typical of our larger meetings, we have 5 session tracks some of the days. In this case, Monday through Wednesday, we're at 5 tracks. So look at the schedule carefully. Greg has worked very hard to schedule meetings to avoid conflicts wherever present. We've made a few changes in the way we request your reservations for meeting sessions to try to ensure that we have more substantive content early in the process. And we also do request people to identify where there are potential conflicts. So I can't guarantee everything's deconflicted, but we've done as good of a job as possible to do so. There will be a special pair of sessions on sensors and Internet of Things. So in some respects, follow up from the last meeting in Sydney. There will be a demonstration of the sensor IoT pilot. I wish I could show you a picture right now, but we're having some issues with releasability of the slides at the moment, but everything will be set up for the Washington session. And that demonstration will be followed by a summit for IoT and sensor web. Participants will include our legacy geniuses with all things sensors in the OGC, like Mike Botts, who worked very heavily on SWE and all the other sensor activities, as well as Steve Lang, who's responsible for the Sensor Things API, which has just, by the way, passed TC approval unanimously and going on for final approval to be a new OGC standard. We're going to have 3 ad hoc sessions at the moment. I don't think there are others scheduled, but one of these even just recently got scheduled today. Wednesday morning, there will be one on land administration. Wednesday afternoon, one on resource-constrained systems. And Thursday afternoon, a discussion of maritime activities. So let me step through each of these to give you a little background. The land administration ad hoc is intended to look at the bigger picture of where land administration activities fit within the OGC standards planning. So what integrations are required between us and other standards development organizations in the domain? As an example, ISO 19152, the land administration domain model, LADM, heavily used for land administration globally. Maybe not the richest geospatial format, so where might we enhance or integrate? Discussion has occurred over the last 18 months with our land infrastructure group about ensuring that any standards work they do is at least compatible with LADM so that we can link LADM content to the land descriptions in an infrastructure model. But infrastructure is not the only place where land administration is important. And so this ad hoc is intended really to identify those touch points with other OGC domains and standards working groups and develop a charter for either a new domain working group or a subgroup with the intent that perhaps some new standards are required or even best practices in the land administration area. So I encourage attendance at that session again Wednesday morning. We will have some very interesting participants who've not been very involved in OGC in the past, but who have lots of experience in this domain. So it's going to be an informed ad hoc, not a very ad hoc. Second, the resource constrained systems ad hoc following on Wednesday afternoon. I've just given you here the description from the organizer of the ad hoc. The real issue here is there are a lot of low bandwidth, low power, lightweight devices in use by a lot of our members that are resource constrained. And what do we need to do with respect to our standards and ensure that we're serving those systems as well? This ad hoc right now has an intent to start a DWIG or a subgroup. There is no charter in place yet, but I think the discussion on where these resource constraints are best described within our overall standards framework will be quite important. So again, another ad hoc. I recommend attendance. And then lastly, Thursday we will have a Maritime ad hoc. And I want to be very clear, even though I put a Maritime chart up on the slide here, that this is not just to discuss charting. We have interest from the International Hydrographic Organization, a number of members involved in maritime work, and those members don't just create charts or distribute charts. Rather, we have had discussion about management of source content, data distribution, be it charts or notices to mariners or other things, as well as the logistics and planning. So those of you involved in any aspects of the maritime industry, from the actual logistics side, insurance, ship tracking, security, port security, etc. It's a broad discussion for this ad hoc. The organizers, Trevor Taylor from OGC Staff, will facilitate. He has significant interest from a number of our members right now. Everyone has emphasized, let's just not stick to charting. So I know I put a chart up, but we really do want to have a broad discussion about maritime. Note that there is an aviation domain working group which has had quite broad success in a number of aviation topics. And so I think that will be a little bit of a prototype to explore with maritime. Safety of aviation and safety of navigation are quite common in many respects, but there are unique things to each and how each works. Obviously, aircraft and ships travel quite differently, and currently their point-to-point travel is managed quite differently. Okay, so logistics for this upcoming meeting. First, our venue will be at the World Bank in Washington, D.C., just almost right next door to the White House. The Farragut West Metro Station, I believe, is the closest metro, and so we just want to make everyone aware who's not from the Washington, D.C. area that prices of hotels drop drastically as you get away from the district. So there are a number of metro lines that will take you to the nearby station. There are good hotel options, particularly in Northern Virginia, right off those lines. So if you look at places in Arlington, Virginia, or Crystal City, hotels are half the price that they are down in the district close by. So be aware, be careful with your funding. It is not outrageously expensive in DC if you just plan ahead. I don't know why my circles aren't in the right spot on this slide. Sorry about that. Registration. Register early. We have unique security constraints on this meeting, and we need all attendees to register as early as possible, ideally by 29 February. So registration just opened today, so you can log in and register, but we will be enforcing a deadline by the 29th ensures easy access to your badges and the materials you need to start to attend the meeting. If you register after that, things get more complicated. So very specifically, you will need to have a name badge with a World Bank security tag attached. So these don't just get printed instantly, so we need a little bit of lead time to get these developed. In order to get in to the World Bank, you'll need valid photo identification so that you can even pick up and use your security pass. So a U.S. driver's license or a passport if you're not a U.S. citizen. Make sure you have a valid photo identification. If you register by 29 February, which means all the badging and such can be printed in advance, you may go to this pub and meet Denise McKenzie, who will be waiting there for 4 hours from 4 to 8 p.m. on 6th March Sunday to hand out badges. So those of you that are arriving early and want to get your badges early, you can do so. Otherwise, when you come to the meeting, you'll have to pick them at the front desk. Is that all clear to everyone, the registration restrictions here? Again, I just want to reemphasize, anyone who's coming in from overseas, of course, you're going to have your passports with you, but just remember to bring them to the session. I've attended a number of meetings last year where people left their passports in their hotels and failed to get into the meetings they need to. There will be lots of OGC staff at this meeting. As you're aware, we have quite a number of people on the OGC staff who are based in the Washington, D.C. area. Many will be present for part or all of the week. I encourage, please let me know if there's anyone you want to talk with in our OGC staff, any of the topics for which they are responsible. We'll be happy to try to facilitate meetings. We'll have the ability to have some breakout areas. Again, the staff will try to be quite visible and present so that you can get to meet them, but this is an excellent opportunity to meet particularly a lot of folks from engineering and our interoperability program, as well as compliance. So we'll have a lot of staff there, as well as the usual suspects, Greg and I. And then lastly, who are not from the those of you not from the Washington, D.C. area, there's plenty of stuff to do on the weekends, not during the TC meetings, because you'll just be so active in all of our sessions, you'll never want to leave. Remember, Smithsonian museums are free. It's no longer easy to get into the White House, so those of you who've done that in the past, it's not the simple thing it used to be. You need a lot more work, but the Capitol is still way more fun to visit anyhow, and it's quite easy to go see. So, with that, I've covered all the materials I intended for today. We have one more poll we'd like to start on if you found this meeting useful. And Greg, so if you can please respond to that poll, and then we'll take some more questions. All righty. Just give the poll another moment here. Okay, so we're in our poll. All right, well, most of you say this is interesting. 89%, this is useful. 11% somewhat. Great, thank you for that. If anyone has any questions, please put them into the chat window there, the question window. And while we wait for that, one thing I would request is, because this is the first time we've tried to hold a special meeting just for a review of the last meeting, preview of the next, little thinner on material than maybe we would have wanted today. What I would request, if those of you who have activities at an upcoming meeting that you would like special promotion, please contact me in advance as we start preparing for this presentation, and we'd be happy to plug other activities. So a few people did reach out this time, and that's why we had a little bit more material on some of the ad hocs. But we will be more than happy to plug any new developments that are going on in domain and standards working groups as necessary or as you're interested. We're trying to keep this session to be a little bit more flexible and certainly to highlight what our members are doing to contribute to the OGC process. So I request anyone that's got things they want to share, here's an early time. This will also have some impact on how we handle our opening and closing plenaries with respect to showing a little bit more information that's not just simple reporting, but rather some more, let's say, promotional discussion of your activities. Okay, let's see. I see a question, registration page not up yet. When will it be available? But thought it was. Greg, is it up now?
It is available. It's not on OGC Meet yet, but it is available through the portal.
Sorry.
That's okay. OGC Meet should be available within the next, I don't know, however many minutes Joe gets to update that. But they can either go through the regular website, or they can go through the OGC web portal through their My account and register.
Perfect. Thanks, Greg. Okay, so for those of you that are trying to register, at least the portal access is working now for that. So please do register. And we see a comment where the poll feature is liked. Yeah, I agree. I think the polls are really good. And any ideas for other polls, please submit them. We'd like to have a couple more polls in these meetings. It's a good way to engage. They're fast and easy. So we'll stick around. If there's any other questions, I'll stick around for the meeting for a little bit more if anyone has others. I do hope to see you all at the TC meeting. It's going to be, it's going to be a major and very active meeting, no kidding. Let me go just back to, actually I'll see. We will start Monday in the same fashion as we historically have this year. That is with a chairs meeting first thing, followed by new member orientation and the opening plenary before the lunch break. Again, really good keynotes this time for the opening plenary, and I don't have a whole lot of business to chase down, so it won't be as boring as sometimes I have to make it. I'll try to keep it more exciting this time. Chairs meeting, we've got a lot to discuss. It's 45 minutes. It's going to be packed. And then for the new member orientation, if you've never attended one of those, it's valuable once in a while to get a refresher. We've always got some new information about what's going on in the OGC. So then lastly, I implore, beg, prod you one more time. If you're active, if you vote in OGC Matters, please carefully review the policies and procedures over the next month before our meeting. So that we can have let's just say, a productive and substantive discussion in the session, the closing plenary, before going to electronic vote. We would like to advance that. Most members would like to see something in this frame advanced. We just want to make sure that we're addressing our members' needs with the revision we currently show. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I will release all of you a little early today. Thank you so much for your attendance. I really appreciate everyone attending and your interest. I hope to see you in a month. Thank you very much.